folks, welcome back to Jerome Bee Farm and Homesteads. So it's mid-November, and this video here was inspired by Mr. Ed Jeff Horshaw. So I was watching a video of his, and he was rendering his wax. And if you've ever watched Mr. Ed's channel, when he does wax, he has these 5-gallon bucket bricks like that tall, that big around. He has huge amounts of wax, and he has this huge stainless kettle that has a water jacket so it doesn't, you know, get too hot. Man, it's a really nice setup. So I don't have anything near that big, but he inspired me to take care of my wax cappings, and I left him a comment. I said, hey man, thanks for that. I needed the inspiration to get going and do that. So he responded back, and he said he was going to send me some monk soap, so I'm going to hold him to that. So I got my wax cappings here, and I use these Man Lake uncapping tanks. I have 2 of them here. One just wasn't cutting it anymore. With 30 hives, I would run out of room, so I bought a second. And the second one, the idea behind that was if someone was to help me, it would speed things up, because this is pretty much the slowest part of the process, is uncapping your frames and getting them into the extractor. So this one here is pretty full. The bottom one's not so much. So I'm going to do 2 batches because I like to melt it in this roaster, melt the wax in here, filter it and transfer it into a crock pot. It's a smaller crock pot. Maybe I need to get a bigger crock pot, but it doesn't hold a whole lot. So I try to do it in small batches. So I have a wafer that's about 1 inch thick in here, but it reduces down quite a bit. So after I melt it, filter it and all of that, and there's a lot of scraping, and there's some of this process, but I try to, when I melt my cappings, I try to do just cappings. Don't put anything else with them, because this is good pure wax, virgin wax. It's been built by the bees one time. It's never been used except to cap honey supers, and it's good clean wax, and it makes nice bars. Here's one right here. In fact, this one's a little dark, but I have some that are lighter than this. So I also have a 1-pound bar. So these are 1 ounce, and I put it into that. These 1 ounces are nice for measuring out to make lip balm with. So let me get started on this. It's a long process, so just bear with me, and we'll get started, and I'll just keep coming back and forth and working on it. So here's our cappings. So I found about the best way to do this is just to dig in. You can't scoop it with a spoon, just grab it with your hands. You're going to get sticky, but that's okay. So as this wax melts, like I said, it's going to float on top of that water. And you want it to be a nice, slow melt. You don't want that water boiling. You don't want it super hot. I think that if you get it too hot on these sides, get a little bit hotter, and I think it may discolor the wax a little bit, but I'm not sure. I've had every batch is a little bit different shade of yellow, so some are darker than others, and I'm not sure what's causing that. It may be because I have in the past also put other wax in with this instead of just pure cappings. So last year I did just pure cappings, and it turned out pretty good. All right, we're going to go with that for now. Let's see, let me put a little more. Well, we got a lot of wax this year. 777 pounds of honey. So there's honey in this, like I said, not much. It's been sitting there all summer. Okay, I better quit. It's good to have a wet rag. Clean your hands off. Okay, we got our temperature set. Get the lid on. And I like to put a towel over the lid just to help make the heat a little more even in there, and you don't lose as much heat through the lid, just like a blanket. 'Cause that lid is pretty thin. Make sure we got power. Yep, our light comes on. So I got it set just below 150. So that's the first step. So we'll heat this up. Once it's totally melted, I'll come back through with this little spaghetti strainer or whatever, scoop through the wax and get out any large impurities. And once we do that, I'll turn it off, let it cool, and then we'll take the big wax wafer. That's probably going to be about 1.5 inches thick. Take it outside, scrape the bottom, because the bottom will have a little layer of impurities. Scrape that off, then we'll remelt it. So we'll catch you back this evening when this is melted, and we'll do our straining of the big stuff. See you after a while. Okay, it's about 6:30. I came out here earlier, a couple hours ago, and I turned the temperature up just a little bit because it was only heated like about 1 inch on the sides. I stirred it up real good and turned it up. So let's check what it looks like now. So it appears to be melted all the way. Just a little bit of trash in there. So we'll get our strainer out and see if we can get those particles out of there. And then we will turn the heat off. Let this cool overnight. So I got to get the strainer heated up so the wax flows through it. Because when you stick it in there cold, it sticks to it. That or it's clogging up. I think it was just clogging up. So you can see how I'm reducing that down. Get as much wax out of it as you can. Looks like I've got most of the big stuff out. So when you do wax that you've collected from doing hive inspections or old comb, you'll have a bunch of stuff to dig out of here. And it takes quite a while. This is cleaned up really quick. I think that's about as good as we're going to get. But I expect it's at least 1 inch thick. So we'll let that cool overnight and come out in the morning, and we'll scrape the bottom of it off. Okay, I'm back. It's actually been a couple days, 3 days. So yeah, things happen. I had a lot of stuff I had to take care of. Had a fruit tree show up I had to get planted. So it's a Honeycrisp apple. Got that in the ground the day the cold front come through yesterday. And man, the wind was howling out of the north. It was cold. It's about 45 degrees right now outside, sun shining. It's really pretty nice. But man, yesterday it was not good. And we had us a hard freeze last night. It got down to about 28 and frost on the ground. So let's check this out and see what it looks like. Looks like it stuck to the sides a little bit and busted, which sometimes it will do that. Let's see if I can get this out of here. There we go. I'll just probably leave that on the sides for now. And there's all the icky stuff. We'll take this out. So it looks like we wound up with about, let's say, about 3/4 of an inch. A little less than what I thought it would be. We could have put a little bit more in there. But let's go scrape this off and get it back in here, and we'll change out this water, put fresh, clean water in there, and do it one more time. Okay, I like to do this scraping outdoors so you don't get all that mess inside. So I brought my yuck bucket out here from in there. So I was able to bust those little pieces off the side. I'll try and get as much off of those as I can. But here's the big chunk, and I just use my pocket knife to scrape this off. I've used like a big spoon before too, and that works. So you just try and take off a thin layer. Try not to get a bunch of wax. See, I kind of got that off, but there's still some in there, and we'll try and get that on the next melt. But, I won't bore you with all these little pieces. Let's do this big one here first. So, truth be known about this batch here, when I set it to cool and I was going to come back the next day, I guess I didn't turn the roaster off, and it sat there 150 degrees for 2 days, and I noticed it. I came out there to check on it and I smelled it. So, that's one reason I didn't shoot this 2 days ago, because it was still melted. So I turned it off, and I think that's why I've got a lot of black on here, because I think that roaster is a little hot on the sides when it kicks on, and that might have scorched a little bit of the wax. I don't know. We'll see how the next batch comes out, because that's a lot of black for not having hardly any impurities in there. But I've seen it this way before. So you can see, the deeper you go, the purer it gets. But you're also taking some wax out of there. Okay, we're going to go with that. We'll take this back in there and remelt it. And then all of this will be spread out and dispersed again. And the next scraping won't be near as much. Okay, here's our wax. So, important thing to remember about scraping this, you're never going to get all this out. That's what your filter process is for. And that gets the impurities out and gets you a nice clean looking piece of wax. So let's get this into the water. Got it set on 150, and we'll go for melt number 2. Okay, it's been heated and cooled off again, so we'll do our second scrape. So let's get this out, see what it looks like. I left the lid on this time, so thinking it might cool more evenly and not bust. And there's bees in there. How did that happen? And it cracked all through the middle. You never know what it's going to do. That's okay, because these will filter out in our next step. If I can get it out of here. Looks like we're going to have a bunch of pieces. All right. Yeah, so look how much cleaner that is. So we could have filtered it this time. Still wondering how those bees got in there. So we'll scrape these off real quick and come back, and we will empty out this water. I'll heat this pan up, get it good and hot, wipe it down so it's all the impurities are off the sides, and then we'll do our filter. Okay, I got this good and hot, so all that wax should be melted in there now. Yeah. And all the water evaporated out of here. So what I found this time doing my scraping, most of the impurities are below the surface, and I've never seen it do that before. Usually it's right on the bottom and it's easy to scrape off. So I didn't scrape a whole lot because I wasn't getting anything except clean looking wax. So I'm just going to go ahead and melt these as is, and we'll do our filter on the next step, which we're going to do anyway. So basically we got the equivalent of one scraping here. Okay, it's been a few hours. Our wax is melted, and I've got this little wax pot here. It's got a little valve on it for filling up this cup here if you want to like pour into candle molds, things like that. I cleaned up my strainer with a heat gun, so I melted the wax out of here and shook out as much of the dirty stuff as I could. So now I'm going to put this paper towel in here that's going to serve as my filter. And I got the heat on low on this thing, and it's got a magnet and it doesn't hold very well, so you just bump it, it falls off. So I'm going to put on some gloves so when I lift this, it's going to be hot to the touch a little bit. So this is pure wax, no water, a little bit of impurities, and we're going to filter it out. Just pour it into that paper towel there. Be careful not to run over or go over the edges. And after a while it will slow down and you may have to do another paper towel. I've always managed to do it with one strain like this. Getting pretty close to the top there. Trying to get this last little bit in there. There we go. I'll try and lift this up, and it seems to speed it up sometimes. And then I'll kind of fold it and press on it with this spoon. You can see it's still draining, it's just slow. And try not to run it over because that's not clean wax. As it drains out, I just keep folding it up until I'll eventually be able to close this off, and I'll be able to press on it. I'll press on it with this little spoon here. And be careful not to do that. Boy, I'm having a harder time than I ever have with this particular batch. I hope I didn't get too many impurities in there when that fell like that. Okay, I think I'm going to call that good. And I'm going to have to clean all this up now. Okay, it's 9 o'clock the next evening, and we had us a snow today here in central Oklahoma. So I put in another batch of wax to start another one. So we've got our wax brick here we'll check out, our 1 pound block. And one thing I figured out on my filtering that was a problem, other than spilling it all over the floor, was the paper towels that I were using were perforated. They're short, and I needed like a whole square. So what I noticed is when I was squeezing that paper towel and squeezing the wax through it, it forced those perforations apart and it was letting particles go through. So that's how it was getting dirty. So let's check this out. Yeah, it's got a little bit down there in the bottom. You can see some of the impurities in there. That yeah, you can kind of see them there. So I would use this for candles and definitely use it for recoating my wax frames. So yeah, it's nice wax, just it's not quite clean enough. And after I did spill that, I transferred my wax around and I refiltered it 2 more times. And I had one blue shop towel that was a square, and I used that and it cleaned it right up. But that wax is in the melting pot. It's not in this block. So another thing, you saw how with that mold release, how easy that just popped right out. What I've noticed is the silicone molds tend to hold a little more. The more solid molds, if you put them in the freezer, the wax will pop right out, and you don't even need mold release. So that is it. So I don't know if I'll post this or not. I probably will, because that's all I got. There's nothing going on. Bees are all tucked in for winter. Be checking on them again. Next warm day I will get out there and I'm going to pull the top feeders off and pull the frame feeders out and replace those frames. And because you don't want to leave a blank space in there, because if you forget about it come spring, they'll pull a comb down there, and then you'll have a mess to clean up. So again, that's it. Rendering beeswax. There's a lot of ways to do it. This is how I do it because I don't have a whole lot to do. But go check out some other videos. You see other people doing it. But so with this, I will make candles, lip balm, and I use it on my frames. And my wife also makes you get a deodorant stick container, and you put it in there and you mix it with oils and stuff. And she makes like a hand lotion salve that you rub on your hands with a stick and moisturize your hands. It's pretty neat stuff. So that's it. Give me a thumbs up for this video if you can find it in your heart, because it was not that great, I know. But we'll catch you on the next beekeeping video. Hopefully it won't be too long. Y'all take care.